The Kyoto Protocol crumbled.
Kyoto for Canada is in the past.
The Copenhagen Accord stumbled.
The issue at Copenhagen is each country in the world taking on their fair share of the responsibility.
And the Lima Conference became a compromise.
In terms of targets, we have not finalized those.
Meanwhile, the effects of climate change keep piling up. In April, scientists sounded the alarm on Greenland, where permafrost is said to be thawing faster than expected. In BC and Alberta, glaciers could shrink by 70% by the end of the century. And in California, there's a record-breaking drought right now.
We're standing on dry grass, and we should be standing in 5 feet of snow.
Causing experts to declare December's UN climate conference in Paris as the last best chance to slow things down before they get out of control.
The Secretary General of the UN is begging Canada to act on climate change.
So too is Christiana Figueres. She's the climate chief at the United Nations, and her challenge is almost impossible. Get 194 nations to agree on climate change. Canada was once a leader.
There is such a thing as a global conscience.
Today, Canada's seen by many as an outlier.
Canada's future down the drain.
Due to the oil sands, missing emissions targets, and the push for pipelines. I asked Figueres for her thoughts earlier this week in an exclusive feature interview.
Welcome to Canada.
Well, thank you. I've been here a couple of days.
What were you hoping for here? What did you want to accomplish?
You know, I came here because, quite frankly, the international impression that is held by many outside is that Canada is not doing its thing on climate change. And I wanted to come to remind the outside audience, but also Canadians, that actually there's a huge opportunity here. I don't think that there is a very justified or fair impression of Canada.
We have a bad rep?
Yes, and you know, how can we improve that was my point.
We're seeing some of the provinces move forward with these big projects, BC, Quebec, now Ontario.
And cities, Vancouver, for example.
But are you seeing much in terms of the federal government?
Well, that remains to be seen.
Is the bad rep the federal government's fault?
Well, it remains to be seen, because Prime Minister Harper was at the meeting of leaders in Panama just a week ago, and he announced that Canada will be submitting what is called the intended nationally determined contribution, which is basically, if you want to think about it that way, the investment prospectus or the investment plan that each government is preparing within their own territory to take advantage of the new economy. And we already have several of those in. We have the United States, we have every single country in Europe, we have Switzerland, we have Norway, we have Mexico, very interestingly, we have Russia, and we have even Gabon.
But not Canada?
But not Canada. Canada is not there yet.
You're being very diplomatic here, but it sounds like you're getting a little frustrated with...
No, I mean, honestly, here's the way I see this, okay? I see 194 countries, 194 countries. That is my mandate, to support the efforts of 194 countries. So as far as I'm concerned, here what we need to do is to ensure that everybody is taking the steps forward that they can at that moment, and Canada needs to figure out what is the step that they can take, but also looking right and left to see how is everybody else taking advantage of this. You see, I think unfortunately the response to climate change has been cast as this huge cost to the economy and a huge job loss. And frankly, in most cases, that is not the case. In fact, the opposite is true. This is the critical year on climate change. This is the year in which all countries are going to come to a global agreement in Paris at the end of December, and it will provide for a framework that will be operating and valid not just in the short term, but over the long term.
What are your hopes that Canada can contribute to that? Can
I'm
change the
absolutely
path
sure.
a bit?
I'm absolutely sure that Canada will contribute.
Why?
Because it's in Canada's interest to do so. It is not in Canada's interest to stay in an economy
it
that
hasn't
made
seemed,
sense
though, the priority of
years
the
ago,
federal
but not
government.
anymore. But you know, I think we need to be a little bit more patient with the federal government. I have heard very, very clear voices from provinces, from the business sector, from the investment sector, from the insurance sector, saying, you know, we all have to help each other. And I'm actually quite hopeful that Canada will be able, throughout this year, certainly as a first step in June, through its submission to the Climate Convention, but then also in Paris, I am counting on Canada being a very, very constructive partner. Canadians want to feel proud of themselves. Canadians know that they have a very long trajectory, not just in protecting the environment, which this would be a part of, but also in building a prosperous economy into the future. And I am sure that the Canadian government is going to respond to that spirit of Canada.
What makes you so optimistic? I mean, why are you personally so optimistic?
You know, I'm optimistic because, frankly, we don't have another choice.
We've heard these warnings for a long time.
I think we're there with public opinion. You look at the polls in the United States, and the great majority of the United States citizens want action on climate change.
The great majority of Canadians want change too, and yet we have a government that it's not a priority.
I don't think that we're being actually fair. I actually do have high expectations for what the Canadian government can do. They cannot continue to ignore what provinces are doing, what the public opinion wants, and frankly, its own economic interest. This is the year in which I am really very, very optimistic that we are going to see a change in attitude in Canada. We saw a change in attitude in the United States, didn't we? Very remarkable.
But
Canada
not here.
Canada had always said, we're going to do the same as the United States. Well, the United States, you know, has taken the left lane and gone far, far ahead. So has China. So has many of the other top economies, many of the top G20 economies. This is the year for Canada to show that it also will join the community of nations. So that's my invitation. That's why I'm here.
That sounds like a challenge.
No, it's an invitation.
So I guess you have to be a diplomat, right, to achieve progress. Have you met with environment ministers in other countries?
Yes, those are my counterparts constantly.
But you didn't have a meeting with a Canadian environment minister?
No, she was not in town. She was back up at home.
So will that happen another time, do you think, or?
Possibly. I mean, she may come to to our meetings, or I'm not sure that I would be able to cut out more time this year to come back to Canada, much as I would like to. But it's a constant conversation.
Had you been hoping for that to happen?
No, it was quite clear before I came that that would not be possible, just because of the timing of my agenda.
Huh. Well, you have until December to get 194 nations on board,
including Canada.
Are you going to get Canada on board?
Yes.
Well, I'll be watching.
Thanks.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thanks, Wendy.